Good evening, friends. I'm Dr. Aajay Shah. We are bringing this another great live tonight. Today, actually, I have one of the great friend, a great guest, who you will be learning a lot of different things. And then what we've been doing, we've been teaching you a lot of 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle. But we're going to take you also on a somewhat of an Eastern journey where yoga and meditation originated. So we'll be learning from this guest who has gone to many camps, many courses, many classes. He's been doing it for more than 15 years. He's actually a teacher and a master into both yoga and spirituality and meditation. He is a lifestyle medicine physician. He himself is a family practitioner. He's a great friend. He actually moved to America at a young age. We share the same last name. And the great part is that we come from the same hometown. So definitely you will love Dr. Shah, Dr. Niraj Shah. Welcome, Dr. Shah.
Namaste, everyone.
So first, where do you live now and what kind of practice setting you are in?
Yeah, this is Niraj, and obviously, as Dr. Aajay Shah described my background, I am a practicing physician. Family physician was my original training, and then I'm working as a family practitioner as well as I see patients on consult base for weight loss. So I'm also board certified in obesity medicine. So basically, I'm a functioning weight loss physician for my healthcare system. That's and right. Currently, I'm in Southern Illinois, but about 20 miles off the St. Louis.
That's great. And where did you grow up, and who influenced you in your childhood?
Yeah, I was born and brought up in India, the western state, the Gujarat, and as far as influencing into a practice of yoga, as you might have shared a similar childhood, that we had yoga was sort of a part of a segment in physical education classes. So that was our first encounter towards at least the asana or poses aspect of it, yoga. And I think my actual interest grew from innate desire of seeking what is all this all about, you know, as a sentient beings, the world, all the existence. And I always had this question in my mind, and I've been searching for this. And yoga and meditation were just become one of the magnificent tool in clarifying or acquiring the clarity in the world. And so I guess I have not found any better tools. So that's why I've stuck with this tool for the last 20 years. Sure, there are other good tools like science, but I think there's nothing like yoga and meditation. And so I just have deepest respect and the passion for this, because it has given me so much clarity of the inner world, as well as that everything that I'm interacting with. Yeah, I basically just developed in my teenage years this desire, and then I just keep on chasing.
I think that's very impressive, because many of us actually got busy with going after science and going for external things, including a lot of the material things, a lot of career-based achievements, you know, family and other things. And I think, some of us like you who are smart, who actually went inside and got into yoga and meditation and other practices, which I think, to me, earlier you start, better for you. So I think I'm very happy for you, and I'm starting that journey. Matter of fact, today I'm going to learn so much from you, because I've been very behind in this yoga and meditation journey, which is kind of unfortunate for me, because I would have grown so much in my career as a father, as a husband, if I had learned a lot more about yoga and meditation. So let's quickly summarize just about 5 minutes, and then we will dive into yoga and meditation. But I want to get a quick 5-minute opinion from you about our 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle, how you can relate yoga and medicine for all the 6 pillars.
Yeah, I think one of the challenge is that we all have a knowledge, and we can study those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and we can extract the knowledge, we can read book, we can pass the exam as you and I have done. But translating that knowledge into to in your own life at the experience level, as well as in patient's life, that is the biggest challenge. Acquiring knowledge is just 1% of it. And that's the same goes with the yoga. You can talk about yoga for hours and hours, but if you don't practice, it goes out the window. So what yoga as a meditation is one of the significant tool of the yoga, as a various tools in this yoga toolbox. As you get deeper in your practices, you will have a better a conscious ability to embrace those knowledge into experience. So knowing those lifestyle medicine pillar is a one thing, but bringing into a practice another thing, and that challenge can be eased up with yoga, and that's probably my hypothesis for you, to sort of convince you that this will not only empower you knowledge, but it will bring that in your life at the practical level, and that's the power of yoga.
I think that's an excellent, excellent answer and point you made, because many of us, even as physicians, we talk about acquiring the knowledge about six pillars, and sometimes we kind of spit out that knowledge to our patients. But putting it into practice requires a very stable mind, requires creating a lot of good habits, requires a lot of discipline. And all those skills, including creating habits and stable mind, probably only can happen if you go to a quiet mind, if you go to a sound mind. And that's where I think yoga and meditation can be actually applicable to all six pillars. So that's a great answer you gave, that yoga and meditation are not just going to help you to eat healthy, but it's going to help you sleep, it's going to help you with relationship, it's going to help you with stress management. So yoga and meditation actually permeates into all six pillars. And that's a big learning lesson for all lifestyle physicians and all the patients who want to go into healthy lifestyle, that you have to have foundation, and yoga and meditation can be a foundation for all those six pillars. And all pillars require a foundation. Foundation is must for the pillars. And I think I agree, yoga and meditation can be the foundation for those six pillars. So let's start with a question, because we all are curious that how did you got initiated into yoga and meditation? What was the starting point? What was the reason? What were you searching for? Because many of us have the same question, that are we ready for yoga and meditation? Is there a reason for us to go into yoga and meditation? Are we depressed? Are we stressed out? Are we doing this thing for some specific benefit? So what was your reason for starting yoga and meditation?
I think, to be honest, I had just a desire to achieve the clarity about the world. And the simple question is like, who am I? Or why this world? What is this creation? What is my purpose? And all those questions that was used to trouble me. And obviously grew up in a very religious and orthodox community, and our country, India as a whole, is a very religious and emotional community, where I was not able to find the answer. And it is very interesting that I ended up finding the answer, which essentially my deepening of practices of yoga and meditation actually started in US. So it was sort of like when I first encountered yoga and meditation, in the beginning was sort of like I have heard some of the discourses from Ramana Maharshi, or read some books from Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo, and they kind of convinced me that there is something there in yoga and meditation that answers my deepest questions. So that was kind of bringing myself home from US. And a lot of time we find value of where we come from when we go far from it. And that was my sense to it. So there are some of the principal authors that convinced me that there you go, that's the path where you will find some of your answers that you've been struggling with. And so uh, that as I deepen my practice first in meditation, and then I become more of interested in the physical aspect of yoga, because to me the exercise and the muscles and body was never relevant. To me was the finding the deepest and the ultimate truth, and I thought that meditation is the way to go. Later on, I realized that the yoga practice could be complement towards the better dhyana or better meditation. So I combined both over time. And so uh, throughout my last 20 years of journey, sure, there were mental health ups and downs, struggles like anybody else have in their life. And certainly my practices of yoga and meditation saved me from going into the pit, not coming out of it, if I didn't have these tools of transformations. There were other tools like chemicals and drugs and alcohol. And fortunately, these two tools prevented me from going into those things. So there was a tremendous mental as well as the physical benefits that I have acquired over the last 20 years. But my initial desire was always finding the simplest and the deepest and the most fundamental answer of our existence.
I mean, that's a great point you made. I think many of us wait for meditation, yoga, even for that sake, many healthy habits when the until the trouble happens. And I think person like you who actually started doing the basic work of yoga and meditation before even the trouble came. So you're equipped when you started going through those ups and downs of life, you already had the tools how to handle them. And that's a big message to a lot of the younger listeners and followers, including person like myself, that while you are not having any trouble, start practicing some of the healthy habits, including yoga, meditation, exercise, sleep. So that way, when the trouble comes, you'll be much more prepared to overcome those troubles. And I think you achieve that. And that's an example that person like you can teach us that start the practice before things happen. I think that's the biggest message I learned from you today, that at age 15, 18, 19, you started doing this thing to search for your internal quest for the truth. You were not in trouble, but you started looking for the truth. And that search actually helped you to overcome many of the troubles. And you probably passed through those troubles even without your knowledge, without even any effort. So that's a big, big message to all of our followers and listeners. Start early before you are forced to do meditation, forced to do yoga. So that brings the next question. We're going to learn so much from you. But right up front, we want to know, who did you learn from? So who are your gurus or masters, and what kind of courses, classes, and other things you took in the last 15, 20, 25 years to master at this thing? So we also know where we can go if you want to achieve something like you. But we will obviously be learning from you. But I want to see where you got your mastery.
Yeah, I think we all have multiple sources. And I think there was one saying where when you're looking for something, the guru appears. When you don't look for it, nothing appears, and you feel like there's nothing out there for you. So I think that's deepest desire of seeking have always made me vigilant, and I always encounter multiple gurus surrounding all over, and everywhere I looked, I found gurus. And I think that is very important that that you are looking for it. Sometimes you won't get it if you don't look for it. And so that's my journey. Somewhat started with studying Swami Vivekananda, and studying complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Again, that is a purely theoretical aspect. His discourses that he's given at the religious convention in Chicago, that combined in books. But it gave me a foundation of a philosophical, spiritual aspect or intellectual aspect of yoga. Then I was looking for something practical, that yes, all this knowledge is there, but it's not changing me, my tendency of certain way of thinking, certain way of living. It's not transforming. I'm very compulsive. I have issues where I cannot do certain things with my own conscious command. And so despite of having all this knowledge, it did not transform me in any significant way. And that's why I was looking for various different techniques. It's one of the earliest technique came to myself was Vipassana. I was at the campus of University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. I was doing my engineering, and some just random friend just came from Vipassana, and he was just sharing the experience. And I was like, okay, that's something that I wanted to do. That's what I was looking for. And then just next week I was there, and I remember my 19th birthday was actually in the middle of 10-day course of Vipassana camp. And that was just very, very powerful. And when I came out of it, I'm like, wow, what was just that? You know, I never experienced anything like that. I had so many dreams in my life, achieved so many dreams, but I never felt like that before. And then I been to multiple Vipassana camps, and that's what opened up my desire to learn more about Buddhist traditions from various, whether it's Tibet or Sri Lanka or Myanmar, or just different flavors of Buddhism. And I studied and tried to understand what is different flavors of Buddhism is. Then I got into various other religious movements where I was given a specific template that you have to follow these morals, this conduct, and this is how it works. And I was not really made for that conformed idea. You just follow and don't ask any questions. And so I quickly got out of some of the religious traditions. I don't want to name any of those, just to kind of to respect it, because it does work for millions of people, maybe not for me. And then I got into just basic Ashtanga yoga, Vinyasa Ashtanga yoga, and later on I did a certified teacher training on that. I've been to various Ramakrishna order of Vedanta school of many places, and I learned different meditation techniques from there and different ideas as well, along with the yoga and vinyasa. And my vinyasa training, my teacher was quite open. She allowed me to explore restorative yin yoga, and the various other practices goes parallel to yoga, like Pilates and various other things. And but they didn't really interest me that much, but it was nice to be explored to that. That built a few more traditions that I became part of. And I would say in last 5 years, my significant chunk of knowledge and practices were inspired by Isha Foundation, and the founder is commonly known as Sadhguru. And I am really fortunate that I was able to visit the ashram in India, as well as in US and Tennessee. And I never had a conversation with him, but I spent, there were many instances where I came very close to him and have a blessing from him. But I went through all the different classes and teachings and various yogic practices in a very authentic and very unique way. And I realized the importance of authenticity of some of the components of the yoga that were taught in a traditional way in India, and what I've learned in US in a studio were dramatically different. And through the process of Isha, when I incorporated some of these authentic tools of the yoga, incorporated, my yogi practice become a tenfold in terms of experiences and the outcome and product of that. Meanwhile, I have also learned transcendental meditation as well. And that was out of just curiosity. I just wanted to learn, what is it about where so many celebrities and popular individuals and a lot of scientific journals and research being done on TM, that I was really curious about what that has to offer. So I have experienced that as well for a few months. I was not able to continue because I was just getting really confused. I had just too many things to juggle through. So I stick with one practice. So anyway, so that was 20 years of journey. And in between those different major peaks of experiences, I have met so many people that inspired me. Some of the few names that I have to make was a Swami Sarva Priyananda. He is currently the head of Ramakrishna in New York. Also the Swami Chetnanand, which is actually the head of here in St. Louis. And I've learned tremendous about yoga and philosophy and meditation from them. And then there's so many books that I've read which I call them a guru, but I never met them. I just read their books and their ideas. So I guess I can't name one, but I guess that's the kind of mind I have that I've always been.
No, this is impressive. To give our listeners and followers, I know about Vipassana meditation. I've not done it myself, but Vipassana meditation is a 10-day course. You go and deposit your cell phone, so you don't have cell phone. You are not even allowed to make eye contact. You meditate pretty much all day. You are sitting in a room pretty much in a one corner. You are just meditating all day for 10 days in a row. You get 2 meals, and your last meal is, I think, at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. You wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I think I think it's one of the most intense meditation camp one can go through. At the same time, the experience I've heard from people, they said that was the best experience of their lifetime. And once people do it one time, they keep doing it again and again. And I'm going to go and do it one day. One of my friends has done it. And I think so. You started at age 19. Most kids at 19 are at a bar on their 19th birthday, and you were at a Vipassana camp. So that speaks very high. That's one thing. Second thing, I think listening to your journey until today, I'm like you described that word before we started our live, that you are a yoga meditation gypsy. I'm myself a lifestyle medicine gypsy. I keep reading more and more things about all 6 pillars, but you not only read about those 6 pillars, but you're also a gypsy of lifestyle, yoga and meditation. So that's a great thing that you bring the experience and knowledge from all those disciplines to make it easier for us to understand. So let's start with some basic. Please tell us the history of yoga.
Okay, yeah, I think there are a lot of literature is written on YouTube and books on the history, so I'm not going to go too much in detail. I would think of history in a two different era. One is the before Patanjali and the after Patanjali. And the Patanjali is essentially, it is the principal character in yogic tradition. In fact, I would call him a father of modern yoga, which in fact, we'll be looking at about 2,400 years ago. That's when his existence was. So he's so principal character where I can demarcate the tradition of yoga before and after him. And that's how significant he is. The before Patanjali, there is what we use the term called itihas. Itihas is essentially the term that as it happened, that's what literally means. But itihas is the combination of various mythological ideas as well as the actual history. And so I don't want to go into too much into get into a traditional or cultural or the religious aspect of it, because then it gets really murky on that. But what I would just say that we use the term called Adi Yogi, which is essentially the father of ancient yoga, or the birth of yoga came from, and the character that we worship in India as a god is a Shiva, which is essentially we consider as the ultimate yogi, and he's also the teacher of ultimate dance, our Natya Shastra as well. So anyhow, let's just not get into too much in mythology, because then people are going to try to ask us, well, what is the proof of Shiva? But the idea of Patanjali is incredible, where his contemporary had two other contemporary, Gautam, which is called as a Siddhartha Gautam Buddha, and his entire dharmic tradition, Buddhism, it is followed after him. So very significant character. historical character, and then Mahavir, which is the Jainism tradition. So there's three powerful yogi, Patanjali, Gautam, and Mahavir. They're contemporary. We're looking at about 23 to 2,500 years ago. And what I would like to make one statement about the history, instead of going into the detailed chronological aspect of it, is if this is the tradition that produced this three incredible yogi, they don't come out of a mutation or random creations. They come from such a vibrant yogic culture and traditions that existed thousands of years before. And that's where these are the product of this great traditions. So if we deny any other historical the claims based on scriptures, fine. But at least we sort of acknowledge that these three yogis did not come out of vacuum. They came from a tremendous, powerful, vibrant yogic traditions. The other things I would have to tell you about this is that during their era, these were not the only three yogis. There were millions of anonymous yogis, and they had significant, may not be as significant contribution to follow, but in that era, there were millions of yogis had a significant contribution to keep this yogic tradition, vibrant tradition alive. So although we acknowledge and give homage to these three great yogis and wonderful tradition that followed after them, we don't want to forget that there were millions of yogis that came out of that culture, also equally contributed to create this continuous tradition of that. Now, outside of that, you can give the exact time of birth and all that kind of stuff, but I'm just going to give you the sort of what essence we can get out of this history. The other thing about Patanjali is acknowledging this great tradition. Patanjali was not the creator of yoga. He was essentially, he was a genius himself, and in a yogic term we call a siddha, which is, you can say, a doctor of yoga or something of that nature, who has an ability to extract the knowledge from the world on its own without reading a scripture. So that is the title that you would give to Patanjali, that has ability that. But even more than that, the title of Siddha, he had an amazing ability to take the thousands of years of tradition, put that very precisely in a concise manner, and something close to 198 sutras or aphorisms or equations we call. That's all is Yoga Sutra, the book that we worship as a Bible of yoga. That's all it is, 198 equations. And it gives the gist of entire yogic tradition. This is incredible task of one individual to accomplish. So definitely, even though he may not be creator of yoga, he gets the credit for understanding the yoga in its entirety and put that into a one Yoga Sutra text, which is outstanding. Now, there are some historical claims that he was also contributor towards Ayurveda, as well as the Vyakaran. Vyakaran is essentially the mechanics of the language. And then you have a Ayurveda, which is, as we know, is the knowledge of longevity, or basically the Indian medicine, as we can call. But there is also a possibility that in his era, there were so many people named Patanjali, it's possible that there might be 3 different individuals that contributed towards this. But so when we talk about the history of yoga, we cannot miss this great individual, Patanjali. And so that's probably briefly what I would like to share about the history of yoga. And there's just so many other details you can find on your own, but I really, really want to drive the point that this tradition, this individuals did not come out of vacuum. And this individual had an amazing potential to bring all that into a one text.
Wow, this is such an excellent, excellent history lesson for us. I think I did not know all this thing. I mean, I heard about Patanjali, and everybody knows, Lord Buddha and Mahavir, but Patanjali, not many people know in America, and there are a lot of books written on it. I think Wayne Dyer used to quote Patanjali all the time, and Deepak
Yeah.
Chopra Patanjali all the time. So please tell us who are some of the contemporary yoga gurus and teachers who brought truly yoga to America. And when was that happen? In 30s, 20s? When did that happen?
I think there are many yogis. I would not know everyone, but um, one of the yogi, which was the founder of transcendental meditation, Maharishi Yogi, and he also established Maharishi's School of Management in Iowa, Fairfield, Iowa, and he was one of the earliest yogi. One of the earliest yogi had brought this technique of transcendental meditation that passed on single-handed uh, from his guru to the hundreds of generations prior to that in a purest form, and that's what he claims. And then he taught TM, and along with the TM, he has taught many other ideas. Now, there is a principal character we call a Krishnacharya, which is the guru of um, uh, BKS Iyengar and Bikram and Pratapi Joyce. Those are some of the disciples of some of the Indian yogis. So Pratapi Joyce, Iyengar, and Bikram, and all these individuals were they brought the Hatha yoga aspect of the yoga. Hatha yoga is essentially, we're talking about the physical dimension. Sure, they have taught a lot of non-physical dimensions in their teaching. So I'm not trying to reduce that. They were all about those acrobatic that we see studio, that we know yoga in the Western world, that a systematic, specific poses and techniques and modifications and all the other stuff and different blocks and the ropes and various other things that is brought into practices. So these are the three yogis that I would consider that has brought this. There were many other individuals that we may not have account of that they came, but in terms of the yoga practices, systematic yoga practices, we can say that Iyengar, Bikram, and Pratapi Joyce were the principal characters. And then you can look at more contemporarily, Sadhguru has brought in last 10 or 15 years, as I have been attended many of his camps where you will find thousands of Americans, and then he does it all across the world. So he has a significant contribution. Then you would look into, I know there are some little defame sort of characters like Rajadish, and then some other characters that sometimes we don't, because of the baggage that carries, what happened afterwards, we don't really, but they did have some contributions early on. And so yeah, there are numerous yogis that has brought this. And I think some of the curiosity towards yoga and meditation started sometime in 60s and 70s, where this hippie culture and the Hare Krishna movement in America. And I think that's where many youth in 70s, they went to India and learned some of the yogas from the authentic teachers, and then they brought. So I do not want to undermine the contribution of many non-Indian Americans and Westerners that had a same desire that what I had in my young age. And they did not find from their traditions answers. And so they did everything. They went to Himalayas, they went to Tibet, they went to all these experiences on their own, India, and somehow they ended up with one yogi. And then they came back and then they started of their own movement. One of the the guy comes to my mind is David Swenson. Some of his work is incredible that he has done. There was another orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Ray Long. He has revolutionized the knowledge of anatomy and the yoga, and some of his work is outstanding. That he has sort of deciphered every single muscles, agonist, antagonist, contraction, what is happening in each and every poses, and a very artistically as well as the intellectually in terms of anatomical knowledge. Great. So there are so many non-Indian individuals that I would definitely give them a credit for bringing yoga to this world, to the Western world.
I think this is such a great evening for all of us, myself, all our followers, listeners, because we are already learning so much from you and we just have started. So please explain the term yoga itself. What does it mean? How does it translate closely in English? And explain what yoga word means and what you are exactly doing. Yoga, I think, means union. So what exactly you are unifying when you said that you are practicing yoga?
Yeah, I think there are lots of different definitions of yoga, and actually, as we give credit to Patanjali as how great he is, our father of yoga, maybe we can just look into how he defined it in his in a Yoga Sutra, which is in fact the second aphorism, which he describes and says the yoga. Some of the Sanskrit words they combine. So I want to just separate it, what we call as sandhi, if you know that connectors. So yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. That's it. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. That's how Patanjali defines in his book. And this is an incredible aphorism that one line trying to explain this such a great tradition and term. It is very powerful, and that's what the beauty of Patanjali, that I can't stop praising, right? And so there are three words here: chitta, vritti, and nirodha. Chitta is essentially is a Sanskrit word, and depending on which which Indic schools of philosophy that you are belong to, whether it's Advaita or Dvaita or Yoga or Astic or Gnostic, whichever the schools of philosophy that you belong to, you will define chitta in a different way. So chitta is a very vibrant and very spectrum of a term that you can kind of define in whichever way you want. But some people will say pure intelligence or pure consciousness, or in a yogic tradition, they would say Purusha, which is the spiritual being that you can define. So you can think of as a chitta as something is the purest of reality, that is devoid of all physical compulsions. You can think of that way. So pure intelligence. Vritti is essentially all sensory experiences and the thought contents of the mind. So essentially all the physical manifestations. And nirodha, again, nirodha is where the discussion starts, that how do you define nirodha? So literally nirodha means eradicate. So you're eradicating this physical identification. In yogic tradition, we use the term called prakriti for the physical and the purusha for the spiritual. So you are essentially eradicating or creating the distance between prakriti and the purush. And you are sort of recognizing what is the true reality is in the world. So you are essentially removing the vritti from the chitta, removing the physical identifications from the purest of the consciousness. And that's what you're essentially doing. But again, if you are following the tradition of dualistic philosophy, in a sense that the physical and spiritual entity are two different planes, which is the dualistic philosophy. Versus the non-dual philosophy is this, they're saying that there is no such thing as spiritual and physical, it is one and the same. Whether you call it physical, spiritual, doesn't matter. It's just the one entity. And whatever that you perceive as a physical is just your ignorance, or avidya is the word that we use. And this avidya is created by Maya, which is the loosely translated as illusion. So the physical entity that we perceive is just basically a sort of a reflections or ignorance that exists in the pure consciousness. So if you belong to non-dual philosophy, then you will say nirodha means dissolving, or disappearing, or being one with it. Like earlier you said, joining. Yoga is a joining, right? So your true self is the pure consciousness. And as you're trying to identify yourself with the thought content in your body, you're moving away from your true self. So the yoga is the process of removing this ignorance of that you are this thought and you are the body. Remove this ignorance and realize who you truly are. So it is not so much of joining, but it is more of liberating from ignorance and realizing who you truly are. So again, when you say joining means two different entity. So most Indic philosophies don't think as a two different entity. So joining does not work here. So the yoga is essentially, you can think of it a different way, is that there is a word in a Sanskrit called ahankara. Ahankar essentially, you are attaching your I to something, identification. So these are my thoughts, which I'm sharing with you. This is my body. This is my sensory experience. Whichever physical entity that you're identifying that you are, it is ahankara. So dissolving this ahankara essentially is what called yoga. In other words, discovering your true self, or discovering the pure consciousness that is you, that discovery is yoga. Or different way of looking at it is that you are expanding. Everybody has access to somewhat little bit of consciousness, and that creates these self-awareness and stuff like that, right? So whatever the consciousness that you have access, you are expanding, you expand that. And as you expand this consciousness, your physical identification dissolves on its own. So this are all different methods of yoga that overlapping the definition of the yoga. Now, in a simplest and a pragmatic and practical way, if you want to look at yoga, it is the journey from compulsive being to a conscious being. That means your thoughts, your mind is taking an instruction from you. You're not entangled into our thoughts. One thought after another thought after another thought, you have no control over. That is called compulsive. Your body, constant identification with the sensory experiences and materialistic indulgence, that constant engagement is called compulsion, right? So from compulsive being to conscious being, you can enjoy body, you can enjoy your thought at your will. That is the state of being, is what we call conscious being. So in a simplest way, you can think of yoga, which is also complex in a way, that journey from being compulsive to be conscious. So again, there is no clear one definition, but you can kind of look into it and juggle around, and whichever definition works for you, you start from there.
No, I think definitely from compulsive to conscious is the biggest message I got, so far from you. And I think if our listeners take one message, that yoga will take you from compulsion to the consciousness. And I think, that brings the next topic. And next topic is that what is the organic yoga flow and what it exactly means and how can you get into?
Yes. So I think the term that we use the word organic yoga, and essentially means that, so yoga is a toolbox, where if you use a yoga as a toolbox, then in that toolbox, there are hundreds of different tools. One of the tool is asana, which is the postures or poses. Then you have a pranayam, then you have, so various different tools. You bring all those tools together and a creative flow from the yoga. And that's what I mean by organic yoga flow. Now, as we uh, understand that that's one of the classification in Ashtanga yoga, which is Ashta means 8, and Anga means organ. And so when you bring this 8 organs together, you're creating an organic yoga as a life, as a live yoga becomes lively or conscious when you bring this 8 organs together. And so that's how, from the concept of Ashtanga, I come to the term organic yoga, where bringing all the organs together instead of practicing each individually.
Wow, that makes sense. So, that brings to the common question we always have, that how do you define this dhyana and dharana? They are so close of a term, but I'm sure there's a big difference and there's a different way of understanding. So please explain dhyana and dharana.
Okay, so dharana is essentially, I was just looking at some of the terms that I want to make sure that I give the right reference for it. So as we receive the definition of yoga from a Yoga Sutra, let's just go back to the same text for the dharana. And in the dharana, it's there's Yoga Sutra aphorism 3.1, and that's where it gives the definition of a dharana, which is desh bandhas chittasya dharana, which essentially means that you have you are submerging the attention of the mind on whichever the object or place or story or symbol that you're concentrating on. So in other words, the simplest way you can think of as your mind, when your mind is concentrating on something, the shape of mind becomes the shape of what you're concentrating. So submerging the attention, all the attention of your mind onto the object, not into the object, onto the object, symbol, or whatever you're concentrating on, and becomes one. And at some point, you're concentrating so intensely that you can't. Sorry, what happened?
Yeah, I think we are fine. We are listening. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. So when you have a state of mind where what you are focusing on and when who you are becomes one, you can't differentiate that. And that is the essence of a dharana, or you can explain what dharana essentially means. Now we can go into various elements of the dharana, but nevertheless, I cannot see you for some reason, sorry.
Oh, I can see you. I can see you and I can see myself on the screen.
Okay, something happened here. Technology here. Anyhow, so I really want to see you though. Let's see.
I'm on the screen. Let me go back and back on. How about now?
Oh, got it. I got it. Okay, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm. It is sort of one thing we learned in our American culture is eye contact.
Eye contact.
Person you're talking to, if you don't have eye contact, you can't have a thought flow.
Yeah.
So the essence of dharana is just that. Now, what are the elements that you use to concentrate on? It is the big question. And how you deepen up this practice of concentrations. So I can talk about some different elements that we can use in order to concentrate that. So let's go into the simplest tools of concentration to the more of a complex progression to that. So the most simplest way of concentrating, although one may say it is the most difficult and most complex way of concentrating, is this. You are no object, no sound, close your eyes, the inner world, the complete darkness, and concentrating on that. That is one way of concentrating. I don't know how many people can concentrate that, which is very difficult, right? Your mind is wandering around and there's essentially no darkness. You're just keep on cleansing all your thoughts, and then you're thinking about your bodily sensations and all that kind of stuff. So that is the one you can concentrate. Then many techniques that have used dharana essentially is it's like a knife in a kitchen. You know, as a chef, you know, cutting this, your knife has to be really, really sharp. Otherwise, you know, you cut your fingers, or you know, the shapes and the presentation of your food just doesn't come out right. You know, so I remember our physician colleagues, I was telling me that you had to buy this one knife that you use every day, make sure that is the best knife, and the rest of the knife, whatever. So dharana is that one knife that chef has, that is the sharpest, is the best knife. And when you have that, sharpen up the knife in concentration, you can dissect the mind and body through meditation yoga effortlessly. And that's why this is a very, very, very important. Now, the other element that many people use in concentration is what we call term is secular breath. When the word used secular essentially means that when you concentrate on your breath, you don't have to worry about dogma, religion, symbol, emotion, all that kinds of stuff. And that's why it is away from all the other baggage that comes with the other concentration techniques. And so that's why I call it the simplest way is focusing on breath. And then you can sharpen up your concentration. Even that becomes very difficult. You know, if you have when you go to Vipassana, you will know that they use secular breath as one of the and even the samyama from the Isha. Also, we use a breath, but in fact, in a samyama, it's slightly different. We're not actually focusing on breath, but we're actually focusing on a prana, the subtler energy of it. But nevertheless, so focusing on a breath is even it's also very difficult, as you may have noticed that you focus on breath for a few seconds, and after that, you just go back to your thoughts, and it's very, very difficult. Then you have a random symbols that you can use. Pratik is the word that we use, and it may have some sacred or auspiciousness to it, so people can attach longer to that. Then you can have some meanings to that symbol, like you have a symbol of Om. It has some meaning and emotions and everything. So you don't use just a random symbol, but you use a symbol that has meaning and emotion to that. Then you use the actual character, you know, the historical character, like say Rama or Krishna or something of that nature, right? Or Jesus or Muhammad, or, you know, some religions don't use concentration, so we don't want to confuse people, audience, but you use any character that has little more meaning than just a symbol. It has a story, it has a history. So when you're focusing and concentrating on such pratima or the specific statue, then you will be able to concentrate little longer. Then you have a concept of murti. Now, murti is often misunderstood as an idol and has been abused and within tradition as well. There are some of the great yogis actually denounce the use of murti, not just the outsider, even within the Indian communities, some great yogis actually denounce the use of murti. But murti is, so you can look at the two terms. Pratima is more like an idol, and murti is not idol, but it's something different. So what happens is when yogi has a intense practices of dhyana and concentration, and when they capture the segment of consciousness and they want to describe what they have experienced, and they transform that into a murti, in a something visual presentation of segmental consciousness. You can think of that way. versus idol is the specific character and the story, and we use that to concentrate. So it's a two different concepts, but often can get mixed to it. So you can use murti is essentially means that some other great siddha and yogi has already done the work to achieve the some conscious truth, and you're using that to elevate your consciousness. You see, so you don't have to recreate everything, so but you have to rely on those gurus that who has achieved that. Then you have a mantra. It's another concept. So you bring murti and mantra together. Now your concentration becomes easier and easier when you add these elements, when you are sharpening your dharana. Mantra is another concept which we can talk later when we talk about the other concepts of dhyana, because mantra is very commonly used in many meditation techniques. Then you have this is concept. I think you're familiar with in Gujarat and many parts of the India. There's a term called Ishta Devta. Means that so this term is extension of murti is a one segment of consciousness. But when a yogi, what is doing is taking the entire community, the social, economic, all the fabrics of the community, and brings the conscious reality of entire community, and it creates a murti. That is a something you're creating a collective, various segmented consciousness or conscious beings, and you are merging those things in a smaller component, and so that becomes that if you remember, every community has a specific Ishta Devta that reflects the mental tendency, social tendency, and the nature of that specific community. So if they concentrate on such murti, their conscious elevation and their concentration becomes much more sharper than concentrating something that they're not relatable. Their culture is not relatable. Then you have a term called yagna. The yagna is you bringing hundreds of community together, bringing them together and creating this collective conscious elevation, collective conscious progress. And then in some other tradition, they use the term called metta or dhamma, where when 100 people are doing meditation together versus you doing by yourself has a different impact. So yagna is kind of like that, where many communities come together and try to elevate consciousness collectively, an entire community. And that is yagna is often we call. And then the term we call samadhi, which is essentially the last organ of yoga after dhyana. And then dhyana comes in between. So anyway, so I just wanted to go through this concept of concentration where you can use many elements, many authentic elements, because what happens in the Western world is people get threatened by some of the authentic elements because of religious anxiety or scientific anxiety. They think that this is not verified by science, so I'm not supposed to do that. Or this is bringing some religious elements, so I shouldn't do it. But what I would say is that when you bring this authentic elements, then you can actually facilitate and magnify your practices. And especially if you're from the tradition, you should not have any fear or the phobias. If you're outside of the tradition, then I can understand the challenges. But again, anyhow, so that is my summation of understanding of dharana and concentration.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I think, like you described, one can go with various techniques and various methods. The thing which has worked for me for last almost 3 to 5 years, which I absolutely love and enjoy, is observing breath. And even if in between patients, if I have 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes I just close my eyes, try to relax as much as I can, and just start observing breath. And like you said, that I may lose my focus, I may lose my thought chain in while observing breath. I just come back to observing the breath as soon as I lose the thought chain and thought process. And even the 3 to 5 minute relaxes me so much that I'm so much more relaxed for next 1 hour. And I think my sleep has improved, my overall mental well-being has improved, my productivity has improved. So I think people don't realize that as simple as that 3 minute out of an hour of this breathing exercise or observing breath gives you so much more productivity, probably 50 more times, that it's worth doing the 3 minutes. And I think that's where our listeners and our followers are learning from you that these techniques may require some effort, may require some time commitment, but the return on those time commitment and those efforts are not just hundredfold, but they are like millionfold. And I think not just in terms of your immediate return for that day in terms of productivity, but in terms of your monthly return, in terms of your longevity, in terms of your long-term health. So this, some of the things what you taught us about dharana and dhyana and concentration is pretty much required in my opinion. And like we talked earlier, if you want to grow into 6 pillars of healthy lifestyle, this is the foundation. This is like must to have if you want to succeed in those 6 pillars. So that brings to the next topic is that, I heard from you earlier that yoga nidra. What does it mean and how do you describe it?
Yeah, the yoga nidra is essentially a concept. In many colloquial language, nidra essentially means sleep. And obviously yoga means we already talked about. So what is you're doing a yoga while you're asleep, which is quite interesting. So let me just go to a contemporary individuals who are doing a research in this yoga nidra, and then we'll go into what yoga nidra is. There is one character, Stephen LaBerge, and he has termed yoga nidra as a lucid dreaming. And there is a lot of research has been done on these concepts in terms of PTSD and some other nightmares and some other sleeping disorders, and how this practice of yoga nidra and the form of lucid dreaming can help people to ease out some of the sleeping disorders. Now, we have lots of compulsions while we are awake, right? But you can have a lot of compulsions while you're asleep, and that's what sleeping disorders are. So essentially, yoga nidra is a conscious sleeping, the simplest way of thinking, right? So if you have a lot of compulsions during the wakeful state of mind, then it's going to spill over in your sleep. And we hear all the time as a physicians that the mental health is one of the biggest problem for not able to initiate or getting into a sleep. And then once they wake up, they can't go back to the sleep, right? And one of the biggest components is they cannot shut their mind. Not able to shut the mind essentially means is that their mind functions compulsively, has no conscious or productive or effective content of the mind that they can progress in their life, right? So in the simplest way of thinking is the yoga nidra is the conscious way of sleeping. Now, how do you do that? Now, there's another a clinical psychologist, Richard Miller. He's another principal character that has done tremendous work in yoga nidra. His work is called I, like a small I, like iPhone, and then big R, I rest. So essentially, I rest essentially stands for integrative restoration. Now, if you improve the conscious content of the sleep and reduces the compulsive content of the sleep, you are creating the immense amount of restoration. And that is the primary function of the sleep, is the restoration of your and rejuvenation of all the functions of your body. So if you create a conscious sleep through the practice of yoga nidra, you are achieving just that restorative, deep quality sleep. And I know as a lifestyle medicine physicians, we have learned so many different techniques to improve the sleep, like light exposures and reducing the blue lights and all the other kinds of stuff, and what kind of food you should be eating and stuff like that. Yoga nidra could be another element where some of the compulsive thoughts can ease out, and you can go into a very, very restorative, profound sleep. Now, the more of a philosophical way of defining yoga nidra is you can look at this way. Those are the very practical and simple definitions. There are three states. You have a wakeful state, you have a dream sleep, and you have a dreamless sleep. So in an actual spiritual tradition is, now a lot of people claim that I remember my dreams. They have some conscious random awareness of the sleep and they recollect what exactly they dreamed about, right? But you can never recollect dreamless sleep. There is nothing there. So nobody remembers what dreamless sleep is. So the Yog Nidra is actually increases your awareness of dreamless sleep. That is the ultimate foundational definition of Yog Nidra. Although the Stephen LaBerge and Richard Miller have just explored the tip of the iceberg, but the actual Yog Nidra, deepening of the practice, is that you are actually being aware of the sleepless sleep or dreamless sleep. And that this is an incredible technique. If your goal is to just improve your sleep, you can stay at the Stephen LaBerge or Richard Miller level. But if your goal is to reach out that Turiya state that we call in the Vedantic tradition, Turiya means a fourth state. Fourth state is, there is no such a fourth state. I mean, there's three states, but in the ultimate reality is just the one state, a conscious state, right? But you are getting aware of conscious state while you are at dreamless sleep. That is the objective of Yoga Nidra, the ultimate objective. So anyway, let's get into just to keep into practical realm. You can just reduce the compulsions, the mental entanglements, and various other things that not allowing you to have restorative sleep. Yoga Nidra could be tremendously beneficial for you to have a much deeper and restorative sleep.
Wow, this is something I did not understood before, and you describe it in such a nice, simple way. And I think when we learn sleep medicine, our 6 pillars and lifestyle medicine textbooks and everything, this is not very well described. So I'm glad that you put us through this explanation. And I think many of us, many of our followers and listeners will look up this thing, and I think we'll start, doing this yoga nidra. So that brings a very practical word which everybody is aware now. Everybody is reading books about it, and that's mindfulness. So how do you define mindfulness? How do you practice it? And what is it means to be not being mindful?
Yeah, so I think that I just don't really like the term mindfulness. I remember that there was a time, if you remember, there was a conversation about mindfulness. Somebody mentioned, I remember which physician it was, and I totally sort of tormented his understanding of mindfulness. Not that I know more than him, but this is so confusing term. When we're talking about achieving the thoughtless mind, or the ultimate conscious mind, which does not have any thought and any sensory compulsions, then what is mindful is about? Full of mind or full of thoughts, So anyway, it's a very confusing term. But I'm going to go back to a little bit to understand what mindfulness. I'm going to go back to the dhyana. So what is the definition of dhyana? So going back to Patanjali, what dhyana, the way the Patanjali explains, is called a tatra pratyay ekatanata dhyana, which is essentially a aphorism 3.2 in a Yoga Sutra. This is essentially what it's saying is one continuous flow of uninterrupted attention. That's literal definition of how Patanjali defines. Now, he does not have a copyright of defining meditation, but it's a very very interesting definition. One continuous flow of uninterrupted attention. How can you achieve that? Or you can think of it as you clinch with the one thought and you're not allowing any other thought to enter in your mind. Or whenever it enters, you're just trying to stay away from it and just clinch on the one thought, or clinch on a mantra, or clinch on an object, or whatever you want to clinch, and then you're removing anything else comes to you. Some meditation techniques are effortless. They don't try to tell you to remove it, just slowly, effortlessly come back, which you have initially you have committed to attach to. Some meditation techniques are telling you, that is, you consciously try to fight through it effortfully. And again, we don't want to criticize any meditation techniques, but that's the variation to that. So when you have a single content of the mind without being distracted by any other content, that is another way of thinking of what dhyana or meditation is. So when you have a repetitive practice of such, you are creating a very conscious decision-making mind power. See, if you have when you practice meditation for 1 hour and you're constantly practicing and trying to keep your mind attached to the one thought, which is very difficult when you are doing a lot of multitasking. Our mind, not mind, but our culture, our contemporary culture is being taught that do multitasking. Obviously, a lot of psychologists telling you that is the wrong thing to do because you won't be effective or any sort of productive by doing such. And this is what will help you, that your constant desire of multitasking and more productive and doing too much and too many things. If you have a practice of attaching yourself to the one thought or one content of the mind, you'll be able to live your life, a wakeful life, effortlessly, flawlessly, with a conscious command. And that is the power of understanding of dhyana. So let's get into mindfulness. So the technique that Buddha, Gautam, that we presume that what he had practiced and he passed on to the people is called vipassana. And this vipassana technique went through many Buddhist traditions, and it is claimed that it's preserved in a purest form in Burma. And there was one yogi, Sayagi Uba Kin, that's his name. He taught S.N. Goenka. And then S.N. Goenka is the principal character in the recent contemporary time, gets the credit for spreading Vipassana throughout the world. When Vipassana was spreading throughout the world in the last 100 years, it came to attention of many scientists. And then they started experimenting it. And that later been often the term used is mindfulness. Now, there are many variations of mindfulness. Okay, so I'm just explaining mindfulness from the tradition of Vipassana, but there are many different variation stuff. I'm actually learning meditation teacher training, and their little versions of mindfulness is slightly different because it comes from a different Buddhist tradition and slightly deviated from Vipassana. But there are no better, good, nothing like that. All traditions are good. So the mindfulness, essentially what happens in Vipassana, the word, it means that looking at the world as it is. Okay, so that will disappoint the people or positive thinker. We were told that you should think positive all the time, right? But if Vipassana is something saying something different. You're looking at the thing as it is. You don't make a positive emotion nor negative emotion about it. Just looking at as it is. That's literal meaning of Vipassana. The actual technique when we practice Vipassana, what happens is that obviously you can concentrate on the breath, and then you observe or you come to an attention to various thoughts in your mind. Okay, you let it be all those thoughts. You just observe it. You do not create attachment or aversion to it. You're not creating pleasant or unpleasant emotions towards that thought. That's all. That's all the Vipassana technique is, that you just, so mindful, the term comes is that your mind is full of all the thoughts, but you are just observing. You're just enjoying it. Well, enjoying means pleasant. So you're not enjoying it. You're just looking at it as it is, neither positive nor negative. And that is you sharpen that technique over and over and over. And then you realize that you discover yourself, such a conscious self, where you have an ability to not get into a compulsive entanglement of thoughts and get instructions from your thoughts, the entangled thoughts, instead of you are commanding to it. The different another way I define that is they come from the word Buddha. So the word Buddha is a Sanskrit word, as you know. It comes from two words, buddhi and adaha. Adaha means above, and buddhi is intellect. So above the intellect. Okay. So when we stay in the realm of thoughts in the mind, it is the intellect. When you go above the content of the mind, you become above the intellect. Okay, and that is really literally Buddha means. That is the above the intellect, has an ability to just observe the content of the mind and not to rationalize or intellectualize that. That is an incredibly powerful technique. In a very colloquial way, you can say that Buddha in a traffic jam, where you are so sane and so peaceful and above the intellect, observing, and there's just immense traffic of the thoughts in your mind. So you become a Buddha in a traffic jam. That's essentially mindfulness is, which
Wow,
is incredible technique.
yeah, this is such a great explanation. I've read many books on mindfulness, but this was such a great way of just defining, coming from the traditions and also the contemporary way of describing. That brings some of the books I've read, even including books from Osho. And I think, as I understand, all of us are capable of having the mindfulness, the meditation, the yoga, for 24/7, including while we are walking, including while we are driving. It can become like a background activity. And that brings the next question, that can we make this mindfulness or this meditation somehow translate into how we eat? Because nutrition, or what we eat, is the most important pillar. And when we talk about kind of eating in front of a TV or eating while looking at the phone, what is this mindful eating itself?
So this is a very good question. Now, this goes back to the concept of, sometimes we wonder that some of the rules and regulation of what you should eat and what you should not eat in Ayurveda, or the ancient Indian medicine, it is so precise. Sometimes you're like, they did not have all the scientific instrumentation to figure out whether this is good or bad. How did they get it right? And that is precisely how they got it right, is the practice of mindfulness, meditation while eating. So what happens is that I was actually talking to another physician, Dr. Patel, Dr. Padmaja Patel, regarding this concepts. What is this is that when you have an amazing physical body, that anything you put in your body, the body's telling you it is right and wrong. If you are willing to listen, I'm not trying to dismantle all this comprehensive and expensive and rigorous research in science and nutrition. I'm not trying to discount that. It has a tremendous benefits in understanding the nutritional medicine. So I'm not trying to undermine that. But what I'm giving you an adjunct tool to find out what is good and bad for your body. So how do you do that? There are so many, just like yoga nidra and mindfulness, there are so many online classes that you can learn from the specific step-wise technique. What I'm going to tell you is just the sort of a gist of it. What is this all about? So I used to do these experiments before I was a lacto-vegetarian all my life, as many of Indians are, or many individuals become vegetarian before go to transition to the veganism. And when this idea of dairy has come in my mind, come to my attention, that what are the issues with the dairy, right? So then what I did is I experimented with different brand of dairy milk. I have deepened up in a specific meditation techniques for about a couple of months. Then I started taking dairy milk 1 week at a time of different brands from different places. Some with the lactate, some with low fat, some with organic, just different kinds of contents of the milk, and then different brand. Every week I keep trying different one, and then a couple of weeks I did not use milk at all. So I was already established for 2 months in specific meditation technique. I was doing a 20 minutes meditation every morning. Then the new food item came in that week. So I used to write, when I was doing meditation before milk experiment, I started all the experience, how I feel, how the day was. That 20 minutes, how was it? Just total experience of that meditation. Then I started writing experience with whatever the experimental milk that I was drinking that week. And then I compared those 7, 8 weeks of comparisons, and I realized that this milk is not allowing me to meditate. There's something wrong with that. My body is telling me that this is not what I'm supposed to eat. Now, this might defy all this Indian Ayurveda and all the other great gurus and traditions that are so vehemently opposed eliminating milk. So I'm not trying to create enemies here. I'm just talking about my personal experiences here, where I have, sure, there's a possibility that I might have a bias that I already learned that milk is bad, so it's supposed to create a bad emotions. But no, I worked really hard, and meditation was so established that there was very little room for bias and errors. But I would not say that this is a scientific experiment that I've done. Now, so what I'm doing here is that when you this is a meditation, and then you eat food at different time. That's a different thing, right? Experimenting, you using your body as a lab to experimenting what food you're putting, is it good or bad for you? Body is telling you, and you listen to it, and you determine based on that what you should eat, what you should not eat. Mindfulness eating is meditation while eating. This is a very powerful practice where when you eat food, they always say that you have to feed your eyes, you feed your nose, feed your mouth before you're feeding your stomach, right? That is essentially mindfulness eating, where you start observing the food with the visual, olfactory smell, and the taste, and the stretching of the stomach, and what it makes you feel in the different organs, sometimes joints, sometimes head, fatigue, lethargy, energy level, what kind of thoughts you are having after you eating. If you do meditation while eating and you practice over and over, then your body will tell you what is right to eat and what is bad for you to eat. So if you eat food is not right for your body, you will have those negative energy, negative thoughts, negative sensory experiences in your stomach, and all that kinds of stuff. But if a food is right, it has a perfect alignment to your body, then you will have the pleasant experience. Again, you have to practice and practice over time, and then you will not need any author, any scientist, any other expert to tell you what is right for your body and what is not.
Wow,
That powerful it could be.
that's such a profound way you describe. I think many people assume mindful eating means you just sit for 30 minutes and eat quietly and not watch TV and not read a book or not be on the phone. But mindful eating actually is much more than that. I think listening to the food, what is causing to your mind, to your body, to all the experiences. And I think many people actually are not paying attention. And I think, like you said, if they pay attention to what the food is causing them, they can become their own physician, they can become their own diagnostician, and they can actually eliminate a lot of food without going to many allergists. I mean, they can just do it themselves at home. So I think, I mean, that's a very profound way you describe. You know, that brings, I have two more questions for you. One question, which is very important. We all are interested in your opinions, your views, because you are so experienced, you are so well read, that where's yoga going? What is the future of yoga?
I think the future of yoga is very, very strong. Uh, as I'm one of the oldest generation of what we call millennials, and also the generation Z. These two generations are very unique, and you can criticize and you can just kind of, you have a long list of complaints about them, but something unique about happening in these two generations. These two generations are less likely rely on any authority. Authority, the principal authority is the religion that sets the boundaries, morals, ethics, what you should not do, and how you conduct your life. Fortunately or unfortunately, this two generations are less likely to get the religious authority. In fact, the world is such that have demonized the religion so much for good or bad reasons. Young individuals are not looking forward to the church on Sunday, or not looking forward to temple on Sunday, or any religious textbooks, in order to achieve what is, in order to give the clarity, get the clarity in the life, what is right and wrong. And so these two generations are on the journey of figuring out the life. And I think yoga has a tremendous potential, yoga and meditation, to help this new young generation from all religions, not just Western or Eastern, all religious authorities that has the concept of orthodoxy, frozen aspect, do not ask question, cannot criticize, that segments of the people will not be able to convince this young generation to what is right and wrong. So this generation is coming to the yoga and meditation. The other thing is, not just this two generations, but much older generations, even they followed those religious authorities. They are not having a pleasant experience of life. In terms of food or in terms of mental health, as you know, if as a family physician, I know that the people from all ages, as young as 10-year-old to as old as 80-year-old, are on SSRI, which is the antidepressant, commonly serotonin medication. It is so prevalent. I would say one out of four patients on one of this mental health chemical, pharmaceuticals, legal drug. Then you have illegal drugs battles we're going through. There's marijuana and alcohol and tobacco and all the other wide range of psychedelics and all the other stuff. All these drugs, what are they trying to say? They're trying to numb their compulsions through these medications. They're not able to solve these compulsions. And they just so when you have too many compulsions on your mind, your productivity goes down, you can't do anything, you lose energy, you lose interest, you become depressed, you become anxious, you get panic attacks, and you just live a very compulsive and miserable life. And that's all generations, not just millennials. And even people who have religion or authority, they're suffering it. From the priest that is suffering from a temple or church political dynamics and goes through depression and alcohol, to that some homeless or some blue collar workers or a CEO or a physician or professors. I mean, just all walks of life. There's not just the hippie people are having a problem. Everybody is having a problem. So you have an influx of pharmaceutical drugs, and you have other legal, illegal chemicals. This is the yoga and meditation is the time for capturing and helping people to replace those things. So I think the yoga has a very bright future. And the other component, as we develop more and more scientific verification of various yogic and meditation techniques, and it's happening as we go, every research institution from Mayo to Cleveland Clinic to all the great Harvard or great institutions, they all are doing, everybody's doing research on some of the component of yoga, whether it's Yog Nidra, whether it's pranayam, whether is meditation, mindfulness, relaxation response, you can name it. There is so many things they are testing. So more and more scientific research will come in the next 10, 15 years. I think the future of yoga and meditation is really bright, really bright.
No, I think you describe it in a very right way. That many times yoga people think that it's for medical benefits, it prevents depression. But I'm starting to realize and learn myself that yoga actually is for complete well-being. I think yoga and meditation will make you, like I said earlier, better father, better husband, better CEO, better professor, better doctor. So I think yoga and meditation is for complete well-being, just not only the health or physical aspect. So I think future of yoga is even bigger, in my opinion, than the future of contemporary medicine. I think one day medicine actually will be pretty much woven. Just like I said, foundation of lifestyle medicine can be yoga and meditation. Same way, foundation of all the medical specialties can be yoga and medicine, including family practice, including orthopedic, including cardiology, all the specialties. The foundation can be yoga and meditation. So that brings my last question, very important question. Our listeners, followers, hour and a half, hour, almost 2 hours with you. They will be watching again and again and again and again, because it will be on YouTube in few hours. So they will watch again and again. But the last question to you is, if somebody wants to spend 20 minutes a day, what is the most productive? What is the quick bang for the bucks if they want to start practicing meditation and yoga? Just 20 minutes a day. How can they start tomorrow?
Isaac, it is very, very hard. I think every individuals have to discover on their own what specific techniques they like and dislike. One of the, we were talking about, we're talking about the yoga flow, organic yoga flow. There is a term we call, there's a term we call vinyasa. And vinyasa is essentially interlinking many different poses together in such a flawless way, or not a flawless way, but creating flawless, F-L-A-W, but creating a flow, F-L-O-W. And this is very, very important to practice the vinyasa. Now, why am I saying this? So vinyasa, as I said, linking many postures and creating forming a continuous flow from it. Okay. So what that means is, now this is not easy. Now, how do you create a flow? So when you have one pose and you're going into another pose, what sort of knowledge you should have for the next pose? It's not easy. It's not like you pick the 20 random poses and you do in a sequential manner. It's not like that. Because when you are exhaling, make sure you're inhaling for the next poses. And when you inhale in that pose, make sure that is well aligned with some poses you cannot inhale and some you cannot exhale. So breath is a very important component of this creating the continuous flow. Then you need to know what kind of muscles you're using and what kind of muscles are agonist and antagonist, which one is contracting and which one is stretching. Because if you have all this random muscle contracting, stretching with the random postures just bringing and link together, it's not gonna flow. So the vinyasa is the term that we use, is we interlink poses and create a continuous flow out of it. And this will make sense to you when I say this. One of the most effective and popular vinyasa flow in the world, I just might want to quiz you. Do you know which one is that? I'm sure you know it.
I know it. I just can't say the name now.
A sun salutation.
A sun salutation. Of course, I've done it. Yes.
Yes. So sun salutation, it's amazing. It's not just a random pose brought together. It's not like that. You need a specific technician and craft and yogi and a siddha to bring these poses together. Not ordinary person cannot bring all this together. You need to have anatomical knowledge, understanding of muscles, understanding of prana, understanding of breath, and various other components that goes into the yoga toolbox. Then you bring that. So when you say that, oh, give me a practice for 20 minutes, what I can do, pick one famous vinyasa flow. And simply, as you can try, start with a Surya Namaskar, which is a sun salutation. It's one of the finest yoga flow. That is the physical aspect of yoga flow, sure. And there is also long literature, what kind of mantra you can use. And so you can bring the dhyana and meditations and concentration, drashti, what drashti you should use in which poses, and how you can engage different senses, which we call pratyahar, which is another anga, organ of yoga. So bringing a pratyahar where you withdraw the many senses, you concentrate with the one gaze. So you bring so many elements, different screws in your this vinyasa flow, bring all together and create a flow. And you practice that flow, you will see a tremendous results versus doing a 10 random poses for strengthening the core or the hip openers and all that kind of stuff. It's good if you are looking at a specific treatment or yoga therapy where you want to improve your, if you want to open up your hip, if you want to treat your sciatica, if you want to work on your lower back, then yes, you can do specific type of poses. If you want to bring up your core strength, then sure, you can do specific poses. But the best way of practicing yoga is bring a one vinyasa flow. And there are
That's
many
a
vinyasa flows.
That's an excellent suggestion. Matter of fact, I love it actually. I literally love it because our listeners, our followers are looking for something which they can look it up either in a book or on a YouTube. And YouTube has a lot of sun salutation, techniques and methods, fortunately. And now everybody can reach it in like 1 minute. And I think I'm also realizing that instead of exercising for an hour or two, maybe cut 15-20 minutes out of your exercise time, exercise for 40 minutes and add 20 minutes of this vinyasa like sun salutation. So I think tomorrow, because I exercise an hour and a half to 2 hours every day, I'm going to cut 20 minutes and I'm going to practice myself. I've done it before, but not in a consistent way. I'm going to start doing the sun salutation. So I think your final message is very important. To carve out about 20 minutes out of your day and start with one vinyasa and start with a sun salutation. That would be the easiest way to start. Initially a little bit hard, and then add more aspect. Just start with the physical aspect of sun salutation and then add more aspects of sun salutation as you grow into doing on a regular basis. And all those things, I'm sure we're going to bring you probably an hour on sun salutation one more time. And they can also look it up on YouTube. So I think today we had one of the best live. I think this live will be watched again and again. A lot of our friends will watch it. Our physician group will watch it. A lot of followers will watch it. This will be on YouTube in a few hours, so people will be watching it. So I really appreciate Dr. Shah. I think your knowledge for being a physician is almost like a guru. I think this is really impressive. This is very impressive. Plus, you really not only have practice, but you care how to like transmit this knowledge to every human being. And that's where I think quality of your type of person comes in, because some people know, but they cannot exactly care about giving that knowledge to other people. And I can sense the way you described everything, the way you took personal efforts to teach us. It shows that you care about teaching us. So that's the biggest thank you to you. So wish you the best, and please keep coming back to us with different topics.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.